Hello, I'm Gary York, author of Corruption Behind Bars and Inside the Inner Circle. I wanted to take a couple of minutes today to talk to you about the philosophy of imprisonment and how it's changed from way back in 1925 to today. Back in 1925, our prison system changed to try to move away from the medieval ways of imprisonment and change the ways and move towards rehabilitation. And from 1925 all the way to 1970, actually the late 1970s, rehabilitation was studied and observed, and different methods were used to try to rehabilitate inmates. And in the late 70s, there was a give up on rehabilitation. Basically, the system gave up and said, there's no way. We've tried and tried. We don't see anything happening. We don't see inmates being rehabilitated. Now, I'm not a doctor of philosophy or a doctor of corrections. Maybe the right methods weren't used, or maybe the inmates just didn't accept rehabilitation. I'm sure some did, but a very small percentage. So in the late 70s, the nothing works doctrine kicked in, and the justice system changed to be more harsh and provide the just fruits. What you get, you deserve, and that mentality kicked in. And now everyone was being sentenced to prison or jail, and the key was thrown away. And if you look at the progression of inmates being placed into prison, you'll see from 1925 to the late 70s, there was a very small progression of inmates, of growth of inmates in jails and prisons. It stayed pretty steady, but there was growth. We've had about 94 years of growth of the inmate population. Of course, our population has increased as well. However, in the late 70s, if you look at any studies from the Federal Bureau of Statistics or anyone who studied the growth of the prison system, you'll see from the late 70s until now a tremendous growth. And why is that? Well, what did we have in the late 70s? We had the war on drugs. That really put everyone in our jails and prison systems. Rehabilitation went out the window, as I said earlier. We also had the 3 strikes and you're outlaws kick into many different states across the country. So now we have a situation where prisons are so overcrowded that the federal government has actually told some states, like California, you need to do something and get some of those inmates out of the prisons and jails. And the states are telling the federal government, wait a minute, let us run our state prisons and you run your federal prisons, and we'll handle this. So many states, like California, have come up with ways to release inmates, trying to find the less violent inmates to release. Many are trying to turn to probation and parole as an alternative, but the problem there is many of the inmates that are placed on probation after getting out of prison, they violate their probation. They go back and reoffend. So what do we need to do? Well, the system is getting so crowded with inmates that we now have to build more prisons across the country. Some states are building more prisons. Many states are refusing to build more prisons. And many states are turning to the private prison industry, saying, you build them and we'll send them to you. So as the wheel turns, we really don't see any progression in rehabilitation. We really don't see any other alternatives being looked at other than throw them in jail or throw them in prison, and we'll just build more prisons and jails. So we need to possibly look at other methods to keep the overcrowding down. Let's go to the jail system, for instance. Our jails are overcrowded as well. Now, many inmates can go out on bail, but studies have shown, criminal justice studies, not just outside organizations, but criminal justice studies have shown that approximately 93% of the inmates that could go home on bail until their court date can't afford the bail in certain areas of the United States. That means only 7% in some areas of the United States can afford bail and go home. So, without getting out on bail, they have to stay in the jail until their court progresses from arraignment to pretrial to their plea deal or their trial, whichever they decide to choose. It takes many, many months and sometimes years to get to their court date in certain circumstances. In most cases, they can get it done within a few months and can have their sentence received or their plea deal obtained within a few months. But that does crowd the jail system. So I'm not talking about people who can bond, who have no bond. There are some people that deserve no bond, and we don't want them on the street because they're definitely a threat to society. But think about this if you're in jail management. If you have the mindset, they can't afford bail, too bad, too sad, they shouldn't have committed the crime, just leave them there. Well, that's fine. We'll feed them, we'll pay their medical bills, we'll spend all this money on them to keep them in jail. Too bad, too sad. But think about this for a minute. If defendant number 1 and defendant number 2 are on the same crime, they both are allowed bail and the bond is set at $2,000 each. Well, this defendant has a family that can afford it. He goes home or she goes home. This defendant has no money and no one that can afford it. He stays in jail or she stays in jail. So the 8th Amendment does not guarantee that you're going to get bail. And it does not guarantee that even if you're eligible for bail, that you can go home. But what if legislative legs and arms throughout the states and country looked at this situation and said if you're eligible for bail, you can go home whether you can pay the bail or not? Good or bad? You tell me. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. It would help overcrowding our jails. It would possibly save some money for the taxpayers. It may help management, who has a jail that can hold 1,600 people, not have 2,500 people in the jail. It's just a thought. I like to throw these things out there, make people think. Please answer. Please make comments on this YouTube channel of what you think. Should the bail for jails be looked at and changed? We know the judge can give ROR and release a person on their own recognizance. We also know that they can we can have signature bonds or we can have special bonds, but that's up to the judges. That's up to them on what they wish to do with that person, based on their prior criminal history, based on their threat to society. There's a lot of things that go into this thought process. Number one thing we have to do is make sure that we protect the citizens on the streets before we make any decision. But if they are eligible for bail, should we change the laws considering and concerning bail? As far as the prison system goes, what can we do to help reduce the overcrowding in our prison systems? Continue to build more private prisons, or come up with new ways or new alternatives? We have community control and we have probation, but we have so many people violating their probation, we can't just slap them on the hand and every time they violate probation, turn them back loose on the street. We have to protect society. So someone who's smarter than me, please tell me what we can do. Very interested to get some feedback from people in corrections, people in probation and parole, and the citizens who are not involved in our criminal justice system. What do you think? And you can complain all day long that we're too tough, we're too mean, we're too tough on crime. But when these offenders are given the opportunity to be supervised on the street and not in prison, and they continue to break in homes, they continue to assault people, they continue to sell drugs, We can't leave them out on the street. We're giving a lot of chances as it is now. So somebody tell me what your answer is, and don't just say the criminal justice system is too harsh. There's always something that can be learned from other people out there that are outside the criminal justice system. But give us a good explanation. Give us a good reason or a good idea that we can use and maybe present to legislature and state criminal justice system and state attorneys and also to the judges. But we can't just complain without giving a fix to it. We have to have something we can use to fix it. Complaints don't fix anything. We need a solution. So if you have a solution, we're ready to hear it. There are a lot of smart people out there that aren't in the criminal justice system. So give us a solution, not a complaint. And I'll be ready to hear from you on the philosophy of imprisonment and the philosophy of placing people in jail. Give us your thoughts. Thank you very much. I'm Gary York, Corruption Behind Bars. Take care. Always ready to be fair and impartial. And if you want to hear about true prison crime, please look at Amazon.com or corruptionbehindbars.com, my website, and you can read my true prison crime stories in Corruption Behind Bars and Inside the Inner Circle. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel to talk about true prison crime stories and also talk about the criminal justice system and things that need to be done. But we're looking for solutions, not arguments, not hate, and not that we're all bad people. Let's work together to fix it. Thank you. Have a great day.